Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, and with me, as always, is my man Seth Price down there at the home office in suburban Maryland. Seth, I have had a hell of a week. How's your week been going?
I'm doing well, but I got to hear about yours. Not enough about me.
All right. Well, so I don't want to monopolize. I've had some highs and some lows. Hi, I'm now on Wikipedia. There's a
That's
little
awesome. Mazel.
James Ruane Wikipedia entry there, and it's and I got home and I showed it to my wife. I was all impressed, and she says, "Doesn't mention anything about me." So I'm like, "Well, let's build you up so that you can have."
Or the next, as long as it's not linked, you can put her as a reference. Married to.
I will at some point.
That's
I don't want to touch it because I don't want to do it, but it has been reviewed.
It is a prickly area. I played in that game. We do it overseas for SEO. It is a difficult place to, and now with a tinge of anti-Semitism, it's. But God bless, Jay is there. So I feel like this is Jay Therapy Day.
This is Jay Therapy Day. So that was my high of the week.
Yeah.
My low of the week is my intake team is drinking from a fire hose, and we cannot hire fast enough. And what I got, listen to this, what I got at the beginning of this week was a note from my intake leader saying, I worked 18-hour days for the entire month of August. And we pay him extra. We pay him overtime. And the overtime bill was amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not sustainable. Number one, because he's going to burn out. He thrives. He loves closing new clients and all that stuff. He's not attorney sales. So we pulled him into a meeting and we're like, hey, man, you're supposed to be the manager. You're not supposed to be doing this work. We're paying all these other people. You're not letting them quote fees. You're making people call back. And he's still.
I'm going to clarify for people. 2 pieces of intake, right? And depending on the type of practice. But they're the gatherers, you call them, the first line of defense. You're talking about the salesperson when you're talking about this.
We call them the hunters.
The hunters. And hunters, not attorney salespeople, whatever you want to call them. In your case, criminal, how many hunters do you have?
So I have 4 hunters. And it turned out he was pushing them and keeping them from hunting. He was making them into gatherers and just getting information, and then they would have to run everything by him. They would have to escalate cases like a $2,500 low-level misdemeanor. We do this, 10 times a week. He would have them escalate. He would get involved. He would have to send the paperwork. And I have administrative assistants for every 2 intake. Hunters has an administrative assistant to get out the paperwork and make sure things are done properly and all that stuff.
Is that offshore or onshore?
All offshore.
The assistants, okay. And essentially, it sounds like to me, again, to quote Dan Martell, it's a process problem. You didn't have the process.
It was absolutely a process problem. What we discovered was 6 months ago, we gave our manager, a great guy. Some people met me in Las Vegas last year when I was speaking at NECDL in Vegas last October of 24. Daniel was with me. I flew him in from Mexico and we got to hang out, which was awesome. This spring, his mother passed away. He lived with his mother. And he essentially has been self-medicating with work to not think about the change in his life. I pulled him into a one-on-one with my COO, and we just, we're concerned about his bandwidth and his ability. And
so your top seller is from Mexico.
Is from Mexico, and he gets paid Mexican wages. I mean, he gets bonuses. What I'm paying him is half of what I would pay a moderate salesperson from the United States. And he's great at his job. I love him. He's a great guy. But what he was doing was he was working so much to avoid thinking about that. So we got him into some therapy using an online therapist this week. He had his first meeting, and he said today he feels so much better and he's focused. And then we did an all day, well, most of the day, 6-hour in-service training on Zoom with all of my intake team. all of my all of the administrative assistants, and and good thing about it is that they are all fired up. They're all together. They're all really jazzed up. And what I realized was, in addition to him not having regular team meetings of his team because he was doing all the work, some of them were like sitting around being like, "What's the point of this job?" Like I basically take messages and turn it over. So this afternoon they've closed in 2 hours. They've closed another $40,000 worth of business, which is amazing on a Friday afternoon in early September. Anyway, they're all fired up. They're all jazzed, and I think we have a solution. But it goes back to the same thing that I thought intake, the numbers were great. I thought intake was really humming, but it was really one guy who was doing it all and was about to go off the rails. And now I think we could start doing regular 200,000, 225, $250,000 weeks, because I'll be honest, I have not taken a dime away or added a dime to my marketing, my paid advertising budget in a year and a half, and our leads are exploding. So we're in a really good place now, but it has been a roller coaster week.
So let me ask you something. If this guy's managing the team and doing this, who's listening to recorded calls?
So that was supposed to be his job.
Was he?
But he kept inserting himself into the sales thing.
Right. And I think you're the bigger thing that's coming is, are you going to get somebody to oversee the team? Because I would say the big set, we're now like 30 plus on intake, right? And it's a combination of hunters and gatherers. On contingency, they close it. Non-contingency, they're setting it to a closer, which is, I'm not counting in that number. And one of the things that I would say is, and this is, I think, true for almost every department, paralegals, account managers for a marketing company. The moment you have a person without a caseload or that is not on the phones, that's when you have a department. Until then, you have a team. Great.
That's a really great analogy.
But the moment you can get that person who's, look, baseball was a player coach, right? Not ideal. It's like, a Pete Rose at the end of his career type deal. But in general, like, you want somebody who's outside of the box looking in, whose full-time job it is to improve, to look, to train, to innovate, and not be the person in the weeds. Because, and that, look, what you're facing is like, we've talked about it a gazillion times in different forms, is your rock star elevated to manager. And is that the best use of their time?
It's not the best use of his time. He's best closing. And he has a knack for it. And so now I need to, and so one of the things he was, when we brought this up and started talking about it before he had his first therapy session, he melted down. You can't do this to me. I need this. No one can do it as well as me. And he got his back up, and he signed out early when he never signs out early. And I'm not begrudging him that. I think he was feeling
hurt,
right? And now, we were in the meeting a couple of hours ago, and he was like, "Hey team, listen, I feel very good, closing the 25,000 and up leads. You guys aren't necessarily there yet. Let me supervise you. But if one of those comes in, just escalate it straight to me." He wants to close those. So you know what? I need to bring in somebody to manage that department, listen to the calls. We were getting transcripts, processing them with AI, scoring them, that type of thing. So we have data, and we were able to use some of those calls to train some of the new people.
Yeah, but it's only as good as the person who's looking at them. Like, somebody has to look at it and then use that data to coach. And again, you're at that moment, right? It's no different. Like you got pre-lit paralegals. At one point, you have enough people that you have to have somebody overseeing them. And that's why scale is tough, because it's not just adding another person, but eventually having somebody to manage those people. So you have a 2-3 person intake department. I remember this back in the day. We had 3 people doing it. And this is not even the closing part. This is just the gatherers. But there's a moment where you need somebody, and I struggled with it. I think I was up to like 8 or 9 people when my guy came to me and said, "Hey, it's time for me to be off the phones."
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but I mean, at least you had a guy who came to you and said it's time for me to be off the phones.
right,
I have a guy who's saying, "Let me take every phone call,"
right.
and
Well,
that's what I had to do.
I had the flip side, which was I had intake doing reviews, and I had 2 issues. One, there was an instigator within the group that didn't believe that it was couth, that it was cringe, to the new word, that would be like, that they shouldn't be asking for reviews. It's bad. I had that piece combined with they were so slammed, as you're doing. I was in one of those growth modes where several months later, they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't do any reviews." I'm like, they're like, "We're busy. We're making money." I'm like, "Great." But
So actually, that brings up a good point. This is something that actually we can pivot into and talking a little bit about reviews. I had a really great experience. We're going back to my cruise and the terrible experience getting there, then charting the plane and getting there. I gave a great review to the plane because that guy really went above and beyond. But I want to talk a little bit about how the waiter in the main dining room that we had and his assistant really worked us for a review over the week.
and it's a trend across the cruise ships now. I think the
Yeah,
review is worth more than the tip. That there's a bonus associated.
they actually get time off,
Right.
paid time off, if they get a good reviews. Whereas they're like, I'd rather get a half a day off, and when we're in port with the reviews, than you give me $100 tip, which was amazing.
$100 tip too, but put it aside. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's interesting, and this is something that I think we don't do a good job of as law firms. And so when I came home, I instituted it. We start asking for the review, or at least prepping them for the review in the sales call.
Absolutely. And what you're going to find, spoiler alert, is if your team is incentivized and looking for it, we now get 25% of our reviews at intake, which is so, again, the old Seth was like, "Hey, what if we screw up the rest of the case?" So it's like, stay away, wait till, but I am convinced by the time you finish, you're not like criminals, forget about it, right? Like at that point, but in PI, people have spent the money by the end of the case.
Right.
The happiness, like look at yourself. You came up with a new idea. It's classic Jay, right? You came up with an idea, you're sharing it. It's not 6 months in, which is the official rule to see if it works. But my point is, we're so happy with a purchase decision. People review their car the day they buy it.
Right.
Is that when they should be reviewing it, or should be like, a year in to see what's wrong? A house, somebody built your house. You get the keys, you're thrilled. We both know it's the crap that goes down in the next 3 months that's going to tell you how good the builder is.
Yeah.
And so, my point is, it is not only that should you be doing that. Yes, I think the cruise ships have gone crazy on it. It's maniacal, right? Like the MC, the cruise director is now talking about it from stage. It's almost over the line. But putting that aside, it's important to them. It shows that it's important. If you do it enough, even with that, only some percentage of people do it. A. B, what I would say is that as you're doing that, that the piece that I think people, again, I'll preach for a moment. Jay, myself, your brother, we go to a Knicks game, we walk over to Carbone's in New York, Saturday night, 9:00. We try to get a table. We walk in. What do they say?
Well, they're not letting you in.
Of course they're not letting me
I
in.
got a guy.
Even with your guy, you walk in at 9:00. It's going to take a lot, and it probably wouldn't even be at that point. They're like, "I'm sorry, we're fully committed tonight. You want to come back at 2 a.m? We'll get you a table." But like you can leave a bad review based on that interaction. You've never tasted the food, you've never seen the service. That review sticks with Google. Just like if somebody calls your firm and says, "I've had an interaction with the firm. I didn't like their attitude. They said they wouldn't take my case." Well, to be fair, it was Social Security disability, and we don't do that. Right? But they couldn't help me. That's reviewable, and it sticks. So what I implore people to do, if anybody's listening here, is to start thinking of this as an endorsement like we do with LinkedIn, or better yet, what is the nexus they had with the firm? Because if you're going to get dinged on the negative nexus, I want that same nexus to be a positive nexus. So if somebody speaks to your people and they can't help them, but they bond with them because your people are great and they've been trained about what's around and they bonded over the Italian restaurant down the block, etc., that if they've had a positive interaction and the answer is no, that is still reviewable because it's an experience with the firm. And if somebody you can't help because it's SSDI, but you send it to your buddy down the block, that is you adding value. Because think about it. You could just say no, or you could take the time to say, I'm recommending this.
Yeah, what we're actually doing is two things. Number one, we're actually instituting like warm transfers to our referral partners.
100%.
And actually and so
but before the
Daniel
warm transfer, are you getting the review?
But then we're following up with them and saying, "Hey, we hooked you up. You signed a retainer agreement. We're happy for you."
I would even
to
me, I think you're going one step further, which is it's the interpersonal. At that moment, it's not like, yes, you're getting them somebody else. But to me, just like on that cruise, it was personal to the waiter. If that intake person, again, and as you restructure, you may have extra bandwidth now. Because if you're taking, you're now having, if you have a manager there, then all of a sudden, the negative call that's not monetizable could become monetizable for that intake person. And if it's international, maybe as little as $10 does it. And if that review comes from $10, tell you 25% of our reviews now come from intake.
So one of the things that we're doing is we've given language to our intake people to talk about an intake, saying, I'm really excited about getting us working on your case. You're going to be like our 1,000 other people who've given us a 5-star review. They're sliding that in the intake, not even necessarily asking for it. Then when it gets to my legal operations and the pod leader does their welcome call, they're going to say, look, my pod gives 5-star service. We're going to make sure that we take care of you. We keep peppering, and then the lawyers bring it up when they're with them at court. So that by the time they are doing the end of their case, when they may get the ask for the review, it's now been brought up to them that we're looking for the review. Not saying at every stage we'd like your review right now, but we're just saying,
I think that you're going to evolve, and that because what I'm saying is, yes, awesome, could not be better. I get it, but the whole point is, it's like any sale. If the person's ready to buy, are you going to say the Ginsu knife? Did it say, yeah, you're ready to buy now, but let's have you think about it?
Let me tell you the rest of the things, right?
Right. If they're ready, the answer is, let me get the review. Meaning whatever that, and having each team know what those things are. And with time, you'll have a system to know, hey, when they say, hey, I can't wait for you to have a 5-star review. If that person's like, oh, I love, send me like they should be, I get rewarded for it. And then you have that bond where they're like, hey, I can pay it forward here. And again, each of those pieces, it's the idea. Yes, you want it throughout. And it's amazing. I've now used it as social currency. My dad's hearing aid broke while he was down here. Brought it to a local place. They shipped it off. It's being fixed. His local guy back home in New York is going to send the information to have it calibrated. But rather than just saying thank you, it's say, send me your link. I'll say, as it becomes part of that DNA, that's the key. I think the cruise ships are almost going over the line where it becomes, but whatever you incentivize is going to happen.
Right. And to be quite honest with you, I left my review for them. I did it because I felt the service was good and I knew it would help them out. So I absolutely did it. And I have and even if I'll be honest with you, I did it while I was on the boat because I wanted to say, hey, I left your review.
You can do that in general for most of the places. It's all game where they send it to you afterwards.
They send it to you afterwards. I actually went on the Royal Caribbean site and I said this guy was great, and then my wife did it, my daughter did it, and I did it. So he got 4 reviews out of us when all is said and done.
It's harder. I was away with a bunch of people this summer. We had this extraordinary guide. I actually built him a fan page and all this stuff. I just asked the guys on our trip to do it, and I'd be surprised if one other person other than myself, I was, hey, I'm going to get you 7 reviews. It's easier said than done. It will take follow. It's a job. Yeah. It's a job. I think that metaphor, meaning that we need to know that people are busy. And the number one thing is text, not email.
Yeah, it's definitely text. It's interesting talking about people who are busy. I have the criminal mastermind, and one of the things I send out a weekly newsletter. Here's what's going on. Here's some resources you can do, that type of thing. And I used to send it around like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, saying, you know what, they're going to be busy in the morning. I'll send it around 3 o'clock or 2:30 or 4 o'clock. And then I looked at the metrics. You know what the best time for me to send an email is?
Saturday morning.
10 p.m. on a Friday night. Everyone's exhausted. They're sitting at home, but nobody can put down their phone. So they got a ball game on, or they got Real Housewives on, or they got some movie on. They're checking that. I have open rates of my weekly newsletter Friday nights at 10 o'clock of 65%. Now that says something about the mental illness of criminal defense lawyers across the country.
test 8 a.m. Saturday morning.
Okay, I could do that next week. I can see which one's better. I mean, I'm not waking my ass up at 8 o'clock in the morning to check email. I know you early risers.
Yeah, I will. If you're able to sleep past 8 at this age, God bless you.
Oh, I'll sleep till 11:30.
Dude, you enjoy it while you got it.
Well, I'll get up, go to the bathroom, go back into bed, and fall right back asleep.
God bless.
That's my thing. So what are you working on now towards the end of the year? I know PI and all that stuff.
No. But
internally, what's like what?
So right now, I got one practice. I got one practice area that's below the Mendoza line, and I got my rock for the quarter is to fix it, which I'm not sure I can do or want to do, and do I just like I did years ago with immigration when I was like, hey, we had an opportunity when a partner left, and I was like, you know what, less is more, and figuring out. So I'm very bullish on family. We've had a great run there. We see huge growth opportunity with every person I hire making incrementally more in as a growth area. We have a lot of criminal, and PI has been on fire, but looking at other areas that are sort of stagnant and figuring out what's
just close out and get rid of them and use the bandwidth and
that's what I'm dealing with right now. Exactly. So it's, again, you have legacy things, you have people that have been with you for a very long time, and you want to sort of figure out how, again, you know me well enough to know I want to I can make it work. And there's a moment like with many things where everybody, and look, I'll tell the flip side of this. We had a sales guy come to us at BluShark. Not a kid who'd had a very interesting career doing different things, but he was afraid of the phone. There was a phrase in the sales world. Just wouldn't pick up the phone. I've had it a couple times in my life. There was a guy, an amazing guy, one of the first guys I hired when I started BluShark. He was the nice British accent. He signed one client who still is with us to this day, Sarah Kaki, all these years later, and she loved him. But he literally wouldn't pick up the phone. So to me, I'm like, you shouldn't be in sales. And to me, I'm doing somebody a favor. If I'm like, this is a guy is one of the neatest, most interesting people you're going to meet. He could, both these guys could tell stories. The first guy, when he left, he ended up with a job where he had 8 people that he had to sort of shepherd through the year as a VIP, wine and dine them at a conference, stay in touch. This guy was amazing at it. This guy could hold a dinner party with his British accent and interesting stories better than anybody else. This guy should be making well into the 6 figures, in charge of a restaurant, in charge of something. The interpersonal dynamism of this guy was unbelievable. Just because you have a job in something doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for you. And that was one of those life moments. So right now I'm trying to figure out, how do I build and scale the stuff that is scalable, and how do I remove the stuff that may have been that the market. I feel like we're on Shark Tank. Sales don't lie.
Right.
If sales are not that interesting, it's one thing. But if something else is making money month after month, and every person you add makes more money, you're like, maybe I should spend my time, as you just said, your energy and focus there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had somebody come to me recently and say, there really is a void in the immigration market in Connecticut. I'd love for you to open up an immigration practice in your firm. I have 2 associates who've done immigration in the past, and they can handle it and I just said no. And he said, but there's opportunity here. I said, But for me to get up to speed on immigration and know it the way I would want to know it to bring that in and have these cases come in, I know I would rather spend the bandwidth on other things in my office. And let me ask you, when you started Price Benowitz, you didn't plan on having family law. You didn't really probably plan on PI. I mean, you thought, hey, maybe one day we'll do some PI. But I know David, he never planned on having a family law business. He's a street fighting criminal defense lawyer. You know, how have you guys navigated the change in the original vision?
I think it's a great question, and some of it has to we've touched on, which is, look, my original idea is if I could market it, I could put it within the firm.
Right.
And I think that is good, but has limitations. Meaning, just because you can market for it doesn't necessarily mean it's what you should be doing.
People, you can market for different areas of law, but they might not also have this. Not, and I'm not talking like ethical issues, but not the same values. May not be the kind of people that want to hang out. Like, look, the reality is I've hung out with your business partner. He and I get along famously. Like, I could sit around with him at a corner of a bar and we could talk for days about trials and about life and about shooting God. Like, there's a million things we could talk about, right? That type of relationship doesn't necessarily transmit across practice areas. Other people.
Okay, so I think what we have done well is we've found those gems.
Okay, cool.
South Carolina, Dane Phillips came because he heard me on a podcast I was probably on with you. Kush Aurora runs our Maryland, Karen Riley Porter. Each of these places has a rock star that runs that group. And we we treat them as partners, and we give them incentives to want to be with us instead of doing it somewhere else.
Right, but those are all criminal related people.
No, but same thing in PI. There's a person in PI, there's a person in family. There's a person in each of those places that then becomes the substantive expert. So if I can find a Dave in each of these places, great. And then we're able to sort of build that pyramid. That's the dream. And for me, I just have a situation where I have something that isn't clicking the way it should. Yeah. And therefore, and so part of me feels like, hey, there are plenty of firms crushing it in this area of law. It should just sort of like the guy who can't, is afraid of the phone, find a place that is best suited for that.
And serve them up.
Right. And part of it is how many people, this is the piece, I'll land the plane with this, which was said at a mastermind I was at. When you're hiring at scale, you're at a scale and I'm at a scale at this point. The interview question that is paramount for senior people, for junior people as well, but will you play within our system? And it's got to be clear and convincingly yes, because I'm the guy, and you know me well enough, I still have a couple legacy players, one of who's one of my favorite people, who is a madman who wants to go to every courthouse throughout the state. I love him. He would make a lot more money. And to be fair, 13 years later, he's starting to finally listen a little bit, whereas less is more. You're going strategically. You don't drive 3 hours for a $400 case. This guy, no, I gotta be in court. It's sort of like what you were just talking about with your intake person, where he needs that. And what I found is that interviewing, not just for culture, not just for skills, but will they play? Because if you get somebody who's a renegade, it doesn't make you money. Right. It's not going to work. And so that as you're building, when you're smaller, again, I was known, I was side deal special, and right now I have a head of ops who's like, we need 3 different paths. Somebody comes on, you're junior, you get this much PTO, you're mid-level, you get this much, and you're senior, you get this much, right? And I'm just, back in the day, it was like, oh, you're 23 years old and you want to be the managing director of marketing? Sure. It was whatever it took. And I think that as you scale, having the systems and putting yourself in a position to hire people that are willing to play your game, not that they don't want to improve it, but they're not going to buck the system and say, I'm going to do it my way.
Awesome. I love it. And I think that's a great place to stop for this week. I mean, there was a lot that we covered, but I think it's all stuff that we have to think about. And I mean, I know I'm taking away from this some things I want to think about this weekend. I mean, folks, I think there's a lot to think about as you start to scale. And One of the things you need to do is always keep the pulse on what's going on in your firm. It's so easy to get sidetracked with the responsibilities and the things you need to do to scale, that you need to also be paying attention and hire the people to pay daily attention to what's going on in your shop so you can focus on doing the things that you can do best. So, folks, that's going to do it for us this week on the Law Firm Blueprint. Thank you for being with us. Of course, you can take us on the go anywhere you want to go by downloading the Law Firm Blueprint podcast. And, of course, you can catch us live on LinkedIn, live in our Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint, Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. That's going to do it for me. I'm Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. Thanks for being with us, and bye for now.